Vrinda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
So Hare Krishna. Today we are reading from Caitanya Caritamrita, Adi-lila, chapter 10, text 16 to 17. And we have text 17 on the board. So I'll just recite text 16 and then the 17. Tanra Shisha Upa Shisha Tanra Upa Shakha Aimata Sabha Shakha Upa Shakara Lekha. So text 17. Rakeshwara Pandita Prabhura Bada Priya Britya
Rakeshwara Pandita Prabhura Bada Priya Britya.
Akreshwara Pandita Prabhura Bada Priya Britya.
Akreshwara Pandita Prabhura Priya Britya.
Ekabhave Chabisha Praharayan Ratnitya.
Ekabhave Chabisha Praharayan Ratnitya.
Akreshwara Pandita Prabhura Bada Priya Britya.
Akreshwara Pandita Prabhura Bada Priya Britya.
Ekabhave Chabisha Praharayan Ranitya.
Ekabhave Chabisha Praharayan Ranitya.
Rakeshwara Pandita Prabhura Bada Priya Britya.
Rakeshwara Pandita Prabhura Bada Priya Britya.
Ekabhave Chabisha Praharayan Ranitya.
Ekabhave Chabisha Praharayan Ranitya.
So word for word, Rakeshwara Pandit. Of the name Rakeshwara Pandit. Prabhura, of the Lord. Bada, very much. Priya, dear. Pritya, servant. Ekabhave, continuously in the same ecstasy. Chabisha, 24. Prahara, a duration of time comprising 3 hours. Yanra, whose. Nitya, dancing. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Rakeshwara Pandit, the 5th branch of the tree, was a very dear servant of Lord Chaitanya's. He could dance with constant ecstasy for 72 hours. Please repeat. Rakeshwara Pandit, the 5th branch of the tree, was a very dear servant of Lord Chaitanya's. He could dance with constant ecstasy for 72 hours. So Prabhupada ki jai. In the Gaura Ganodesha Dipika verse 71, it is stated that Vakeshwara Pandit was an incarnation of Aniruddha, one of the quadruple expansions of Vishnu, Vasudeva, Shankarshan, Aniruddha and Pradyumna. He could dance wonderfully for 72 continuous hours. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu played in dramatic performances in the house of Srivas Pandit, Vakreshwara Pandit was one of the chief dancers, and he danced continuously for that length of time. Sri Govinda Das, an Oriya devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, has described the life of Vakreshwara Pandit in his book Gaura Krishnodaya. There are many disciples of Vakreshwara Pandit in Orissa, and they are known as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, although they are Oriyas. Among these disciples are Sri Gopal Guru and his disciple Sri Dhyana Chandra Goswami. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasad Bhutale Srimate Krishna Goswami Devani Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasad Bhutale Srimate I seek the blessings of all the devotees that I can speak something that is beneficial to all of us, and Caitanya Caritamrita is way beyond me, but I'm just repeating what I've heard from other devotees and what I have discovered from my research. So in this chapter, which is entitled The Trunk, Branches and Sub-Branches of the Chaitanya Tree, This is a beautiful picture. I'm not sure if you can see it from here. It's a picture of Lord Chaitanya, who is the branch of the tree, and then there's all the different devotees who are the sub-branches and the sub-branches of those sub-branches, and they are distributing the fruits of that tree. So they are all bona fide. So in the beginning of this chapter, I'll just pass this book around so you can see the picture. So in the beginning of this chapter, it talks about how there are many branches and sub-branches of Lord Chaitanya, and that none of them are considered higher or lower. We shouldn't think that this branch is higher or this branch is lower. They are all offered due respect and humble respect. There's unconditional respect given to all the different branches and sub-branches. So Srila Prabhupada, he came to the West, and he is also distributing the fruits of Lord Chaitanya's tree of love of Godhead. So Lord Chaitanya is the gardener, and he's distributing that fruit. And there are many branches there. So one of these branches, the fifth branch, is Vakreshwara Pandit. And it said in the Caitanya Caritamrita Madhya 14:224, in Vrindavan, the natural speech of the people sounds like music, and their natural motion resembles a dance. So Vakreshwara Pandit, he is well known as a great dancer, and he could dance for 72 hours continuously. That's 3 days non-stop. Yeah, that's incredible. So when we hear about all these amazing devotees, we hear that we are inspired by those devotees, and we follow in their footsteps. So we don't imitate them, but we get inspiration from them. We pray to them for guidance, that we can also serve Krishna and our spiritual masters in the line of coming from the disciplic chain, and we give that to our best we can. We can't become that devotee, but we can follow in their footsteps. So we see even now Srila Prabhupada came to the West, and he introduced this reintroduced this Harinam Sankirtan party all in the Western countries, also in Africa and Asia, and even in Australia, New Zealand. So we see that this fruit is being distributed all over the world. And Srila Prabhupada, I want to thank my husband for helping me with this class. He was mentioning how Srila Prabhupada, he's so innovative in his preaching, that he is also part of the different sub-branches of Lord Chaitanya's movement. So we are all participating in this Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, and we are also part of the sub-branches and part of those sub-branches. So when we look at a tree, we have the main trunk, which is the biggest and strongest, and then there's branches and sub-branches. So those branches are a bit smaller than the main trunk of the tree, and then there's sub-branches which are even smaller. But that doesn't mean that they are disconnected from this Lord Chaitanya's movement. So they're all connected to the main tree, the trunk of the tree and the root of the tree, which is love of Godhead. And every single devotee is connected to Lord Chaitanya's movement and distributing the fruits. Just like Srila Prabhupada showed by his own example, there's many different types of devotees. So some devotees are attracted to, like Indadumna Swami, he goes to the Polish festival. And I was listening to this one class where Sachinandan Swami was saying he was invited by Indadumna Swami to go to the Polish tour, and there was this like rock band going, and there was this Mohawk person, with the spiky thing, and he was like in ecstasy, and he was like, oh, and Indadumna Swami went down on his knees, and he was like, oh, this is ecstasy. And then Sachinandan Swami, with his ecstatic way of saying, he said, oh, and this was so amazing. So you have different branches, like some people, and the fruits, the people who are attracted to those fruits, it's a different innovative style. So there's different branches also. some devotees, some people are attracted to the mellow type of kirtan, more like sit down and very soft and melodious and meditative. So these different branches, it doesn't mean that you're getting a different, the fruits may have a different taste, but they're all coming from this main trunk of the tree, which is Lord Chaitanya. So as we saw in the picture there, the fruits are being distributed. So through Srila Prabhupada's mercy, he has given this Krishna consciousness to so many disciples, and those disciples in their unique way and innovative way, they are also distributing Krishna consciousness and giving the fruits of love of Godhead. So we are also participating in that fruit, just like at Krishna village here, we have so much chanting going on, kirtan, prasadam distribution. So even this prasadam distribution is distribution of the fruits. So there is the direct external, like going out on books, distributing books, going out on Harinam Sankirtan, and then there's also other indirect service. Reminds me of when Vaisheshika Prabhu, he was giving one class, and he was saying that some devotees may be able to go out on books, but it doesn't mean that those devotees who are not going out directly are not participating in the movement. He says there are some devotees who are packing the books, some devotees who are cooking for the devotees, who are going out on books, and it's all connected. So they're inviting new people to the temple, and those new people who are taking that fruit are coming and seeing the beautiful forms of the Lord, the fresh garlands, and even though some of them, they may not know anything about the deities, but there's that attraction, because every single one of us, we are connected to this Chaitanya tree. So there's two tracks we hear in the scriptures that there's the train runs on two tracks. So we have Pancharatrika Vidhi and Bhagavad Vidhi. Yes, thank you. So we have, we need to follow the process. We have our sadhana, hearing, chanting, and all the different processes. And we can't give this, that's Pancharatrika Vidhi, and it's deity worship. So how can we do deity worship? How can we engage in all this service? All that is backed up by the hearing and chanting process. If we don't become empowered ourselves, we don't take up this process, then the fruit we won't be able to give the fruit. Just like if we give this knowledge to someone, but if we ourselves have not realized it and we are not strong in our faith, it's only very surface. We are only able to give what is on the surface. Just like when we are doing kirtan for the Lord, we are actually singing kirtan for the pleasure of the Lord. It's not a performance or not competing with someone. We are trying to serve the Lord by the mercy of our spiritual master, connecting everyone. We were trying to become a transparent via medium, so we can connect everyone to the Lord. So by our purity, to the degree that we are surrendered and we are offering this service to the Lord, to that degree people are becoming attracted. Of course, every individual also has their own level of Krishna consciousness. It's just like this one class I heard where they may not be practitioners of Krishna consciousness, but because now kirtan is so popular, there are people who are doing kirtan, chanting the Maha Mantra, and they may not be practicing. So if a sincere person comes and hears that, okay, that person may not have that potency, but because that person's sincere desire, Krishna in the heart as Chaitya Guru will direct them to a bona fide person who's actually following the process. So there is some benefit there. But we see that when one is sincere, no matter what happens, Krishna will bring that person to the pure representatives of the Lord, where they can gradually progress. So none of us, every one of us, we are connected to this Chaitanya tree, and it behooves us all, we all have a responsibility to try to become more and more purified, and to try to become a more transparent via medium in the service of the Lord, because that's when we get the empowerment to distribute that fruit. So in Srimad Bhagavatam 7:14-39, in the purport, it mentions that one has to become authorized by Krishna to be able to preach. So how can one become authorized? Is that by following the process that is given by the previous acharyas, by Srila Prabhupada, our founder acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and following his disciples and grand disciples. And how do we follow? It's not that we blindly also accept someone who is following. We need to also cultivate this Krishna consciousness ourselves. We need to read Prabhupada's books so we can also observe and see who is a bona fide person who I can follow. So sometimes there are people also within the Krishna consciousness movement who may follow, we have different grades of devotees, different levels of practitioners. So every single person, just like in Bhagavad Gita, it's that verse Brahmani Kavihastini. So the humble sage sees but with equal vision an elephant, a dog eater, a sage. So we need to respect everyone and see everyone equally as a servant of the Lord. So Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. At the same time, we also need to use our discrimination and discretion, in the sense that we're not minimizing someone or we don't look down on someone, but we choose our association. We want to make progress on the path of spiritual life, so we need to choose our association. We see, okay, this person is sincerely trying to practice, let me associate with them. We try to associate with people who are on the same level or higher, and then we also are compassionate to those who are trying to follow sincerely. So we need to first relish the fruit ourselves before we are able to give that fruit to others, because the potency will be will vary according to our practice. So simultaneously the practice goes on, and that's when the mercy comes through, flows down, just like in the picture where we saw the fruits are being handed down very carefully, very gently. So it's not like the fruit is thrown, very carefully it's being passed down, and very carefully it's being handed down, and very carefully it's being received. So we need to follow this process very carefully, very mindfully, conscientiously and consciously. So every single service we do, sometimes devotees think that, deity worship is higher. It's not higher, it's the consciousness of the practitioner. It's better to be a sincere sweeper in the street than a puffed up pujari. So it's the consciousness with which we are practicing. So there's one pastime, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, there was one great scholar. He was very impressed by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and his followers. So he went to him and he says, I want to learn from you. He said, okay, you go to this one devotee. I forgot the name of that devotee. So he went to that devotee and he was doing humble gardening service. So he went back to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and he says, maybe you mistaken me, you sent me to this devotee. And he says, no, I sent you to the right person. So he started following that devotee. I heard this pastime, one of the speakers was mentioning. So then he humbly followed and he observed the character of this devotee. So it's not that one has to be a big scholar or a big person externally, but it's the consciousness. And it's also not minimizing the pujari and the service that they do, because worshipping the deities is also a very purifying process, and a great responsibility for the practitioner, who needs to also follow the sadhana bhakti, chants minimum 16 rounds, read Srila Prabhupada's books and practice. So then that great scholar, he was humbled, and he learned that yes, it's the consciousness of the person that is the determining factor. It's not the external service that is done. So sometimes we also observe that sometimes devotees may be in high positions and that. So there was one question recently asked by one devotee, what does it mean to surrender? Okay, surrender doesn't mean, okay, I'm surrendered now and that's fine, I'm on my way on the airplane and easy ride there. Surrender is an ongoing process. Just like we have the example of Dhruva Maharaj. He's a great pure devotee, but also it's an ongoing process, because we find that even though he's a pure devotee and it was a pastime, he became angry at the yakshas who killed his brother. So surrender is an ongoing process. Also we observe in our own life that we are practicing Krishna consciousness, and sometimes we are overcome, most of the time actually, I would say for myself, covered over by Maya, and then there's some glimpses of Krishna consciousness. So surrender is an ongoing process. We need to, just like we bathe, doesn't mean that we bathe then we fine. We need to bathe every day, and we need to also eat every day to nourish our body. Just like that, we need to immunize ourselves from the contaminating influence of Kali Yuga by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So by chanting, hearing, reading Srila Prabhupada's books, associating with devotees, and trying to sincerely engage in devotional service according to our nature, then we can gradually make progress on this devotional path, and then we can become better instruments in distributing the fruits of love of Godhead. So in that example, when we heard about how inspiring it is for Kishore Pandit, so we see many devotees also who go out on Harinam. There's one devotee who's part of the Harinam Ruchi. There's Harinam Ananda. He likes dancing a lot. So we can also get the inspiration from Rakeshwar Pandit. So I was just going through the beginning of this chapter, the trunk, branches and sub-branches of the Chaitanya tree, and I just found this point very valid to repeat again. Text 1, it talks about if even a doggish non-devotee somehow takes shelter of such devotees, he enjoys the aroma of the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the trunk of the tree. So it says in Kali Yuga, almost every one of us has this Shudra mentality, this doggish mentality, and in that text Prabhupada was mentioning how we have that doggish mentality because the dog doesn't even discriminate the tulsi plant. It has a tendency to even urinate on the tulsi plant, who is a great devotee of Krishna. But it says that even we have this doggish mentality, we also have a chance by associating with that pure devotee. Even us with the doggish mentality can become purified, and the cats and other lower entity type of consciousness we have, we can also have this opportunity to become purified if we associate with these devotees, hear about them, be inspired by them, try to follow in their footsteps. And just also to reiterate that point about how in text 4 it mentioned that the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were many, but none of them should be considered lower or higher. This cannot be ascertained. So as we keep reading this chapter, I think there's more than 200 texts. So we're going to hear about many branches and sub-branches and sub-branches. And so there's different, according to our nature, we are inspired by different pastimes. So some devotees may be attracted to the dancing, going out on Harinam. Some devotees may be attracted to the deity worship, and it's all connected, just like what Vaisheshika Prabhu said, it's all connected. We are all taking part in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. And just before I end there, my husband was reminding me of this one pastime where Rameshwar Prabhu, who is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, he was taking part in, he was instrumental also in the publishing of the Caitanya Caritamrita. And one devotee, he had mentioned to one devotee that those devotees who are distributing the books, they are actually directly taking part in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. So one Mataji, she inquired from Prabhupada just to verify this, and then that the Sankirtan movement is actually taking part in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. And then Srila Prabhupada says, yes, this is the correct understanding. So we are all taking part in this Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, and to the degree of our surrender, to that degree we are able to give the fruits of love of Godhead. So Lord Chaitanya mentions in his Shikshashtakam that Trinada Pisunichena Tarorivasa Hishnuna Manina Manadena Kirtana Esadahari. So we hear also how we need to wear this verse like a garland, as a garland around our neck, that we need to develop this humility, and then only we are able to become empowered instruments in giving this love of Godhead. So some of us may not be directly going out distributing books or be that powerful, but by just our sincere practice, to whatever degree we can and inclination we have, we do our service to the best of our ability in following in the footsteps of our spiritual master and all the previous acharyas. Then by that example, then someone can be inspired. There's one example, there's so many examples actually of book distributors going out, and they may not be so active, but they may be weekend warriors going out on the weekend, but they distribute this one book to someone who will later take it up and be a very powerful preacher. So that devotee, just may have gone once and given this book to someone else who becomes so empowered. So that's where it says that one shouldn't compare higher and lower. That we just need to sincerely try to do devotional service to the best of our ability, and then Krishna sees what's in our heart, and he will reciprocate to that degree. So so we'll end there. So if anyone has any questions, comments, corrections. Yes, Prabhu.
Is there any describe that Bhaktishara Pandit has So he danced 72 hours non-stop. Is there any description that was just once, or that was a regular occurrence that he would perform?
I'm not so familiar with Caitanya Caritamrita, but I have heard one of the, maybe Vaisheshika Prabhu, one of the devotees mentioned that there's one pastime where, I forgot the name of that devotee, and he was Prakeshwara Pandit was taking part in the Harinam party, and then some devotees were trying to get near him, and this one devotee, Devananda Pandit, he protected Prakeshwara Pandit.
And then Caitanya Mahaprabhu went to Jagannath Puri. He also went to Jagannath Puri. It's a lot of stories about Prakeshwara Pandit. And that place where the Gambhira, where Lord Chaitanya lived, at the house of Kashi Mishra, when Kashi Mishra passed away, that house was inherited by Prakeshwara Pandit. And you can hear all these stories when you go there. That was inherited, and then he passed it on to his disciple, who passed it on to his disciple, Chandra Goswami. And then Radhakanta, when you go there, there's the Radhakanta deities inside there. That was established by Gopal Guru. But he used to dance at the Rath Yatra, and so there's different, and he would dance a long time. So I don't know if there was another time where he danced 72 hours, but he was always dancing, and he made Lord Chaitanya feel very ecstatic. And there's an instance where he said that you could bring 1,000 Gandharvas to sing for me continuously, because Gandharvas are known to be able to sing for days on end. They're famous singers. So if you could bring them here and to chant your glories, and I'll continuously dance to their singing. It's very exceptional.
Thank you, Maharaj.
I think when you dance, you kind of remind me of Bhaktishara. I remember one time in Melbourne, we used to have these competitions who could dance the longest at night time. here before. He was the second. The two were fighting out what to do. We all trooped out. Jana's still dancing. He was the dancer. We kind of read about those stories of Vakashara Pandit, so we got inspired and we were dancing. So, but that was only a couple of hours, still a couple of hours, but Vakashara Pandit 72 hours, 3 days non-stop, and he could have kept going. That's it. So there's a whole book written on Vakashara Pandit by his disciples, and also by Jana Chandra, the disciple of Gopal. But these interesting stories there. One interesting point, you remember that the house where Lord Chaitanya stayed in Puri, the house of Kashi Mishra, and he was one of the priests of the temple, one of the priests of the king also. And Kashi Mishra was formerly Kubja. You remember Krishna there, Kubja, the professional prostitute in Mathura, who invited Krishna to her house, and Krishna went there, and she came back in Caitanya Lila as Kashi Mishra, and Lord Chaitanya stayed at his house. So how's that for a story?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Just going to add that we used to have dancing competitions, usually on Balara Jayanti in Sydney, and there'd be like a referee devotee, and he'd name a step, you had to dance with your hands on your hips or dance on one leg. And there'd be 50 devotees in the competition, and then gradually, if you didn't do the step, then you were out. And gradually it was down to the best 2 dancers, and it was really hard to get those last 2, one of them out, because they were really good dancers, and it would go for a couple of hours, the whole competition.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Same night we'd have a Varuni competition, drinking cups and cups of Varuni.
Thank you for sharing that. Maybe we should ask Triti Mataji if we could do the dancing competition. I think on Janmashtami they did something, not dancing, but they did, I'm not sure, I was, at the back. Thank you for sharing.
We also had girl leading contest too. It was a lot of fun.
I'm not sure nowadays though with the gulab eating and the Varuni, because everyone's so health conscious. But the dancing one sounds ecstatic. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai.